First, Lieutenant Gracie Gallegos back to introduce our first panel. This panel is comprised of the 3 Air Force Air Logistics Complex commanders, General von Hoffman, General Hammerstead, and General King. Retired Senior Executive Service, Ms. Cindy Abbott, is today's moderator. Brigadier General von Hoffman is the commander, Ogden Air Logistics Complex, Hill Air Force Base, Utah. As commander, she leads a team of more than 8,500 personnel performing depot maintenance, repair, overhaul, and modification of the A-10, C-130, T-38, F-16, F-22, F-35, and the Minuteman ICBM system. Brigadier General Hammerstead is the commander, Warner Robins Air Logistics Complex, Robins Air Force Base, Georgia. She leads a team that performs program depot maintenance and modification on all variants of the F-15, C-130, C-5, C-17, and Special Operations Forces aircraft, as well as the RQ-4, E-8, and TH-1H. Brigadier General King is the commander, Oklahoma City Air Logistics Complex, Tinker Air Force Base, Oklahoma. He leads a team of more than 10,000 military and civilian professionals performing program depot maintenance and modifications on KC-46, KC-135, B-1, B-52, E-3, and Navy E-6 aircraft. Ms. Abbott was a career Air Force civil servant and a member of the Senior Executive Service. She served as the Director of Logistics for Air Force Lifecycle Management Center, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Ohio. She oversaw all activities for lifecycle logistics and product support management. Ms. Abbott provided program and resource support to executive officers for approximately 400 programs and was responsible for more than 3,800 lifecycle logisticians. Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Abbott and our Air Force Air Logistics Complex commanders.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Air Logistics Complex Commanders Panel. My name is Cindy Abbott, and I'm going to be the moderator at the event. We are honored today to have our commanders to help give us some insight about our complexes. So before we begin, let's understand what a complex does. We have Captain Scott Jensen, who is our Wasatch Warrior, and he is also the chapter chairman for LOA. So I'm going to turn it over to him so he can give you an overview of the complex. Captain, over to you.
Greetings, Log Nation. The mission of the Air Force Sustainment Center is to provide sustainment and logistics readiness to provide combat power for America. AFSC is a geographically separated command with 3 air logistics complexes, 2 supply chain wings, and 3 air base wings. The 3 air logistics complexes at Hill, Tinker, and Robins provide a myriad of services to include but are not limited to weapon system sustainment and overhaul, commodities overhaul, software engineering, and aircraft battle damage repair. In addition, each location specializes in its own areas, making them centers of excellence. Ogden ALC specializes in landing gear and missiles, Tinker specializes in engines, and Robin specializes in avionics. The 2 supply chain wings collaborate very closely with the complexes to enable weapon system and commodities overhaul. Put very simply, the supply chain management wing's mission is to ensure that parts are on the shelf for when they are needed. And the supply chain operations wing's mission is to ensure those parts leave the shelf and get into the hands of the customers when they need it. Additionally, the air base wings serve as the backbone of the complexes and supply chain wings, as well as other mission partners that share their installation by providing basic mission support. Weapon system sustainment is a total team effort which requires close teamwork between the air logistics complexes, supply chain wings, and air base wings, as well as external partners such as Defense Logistics Agency, program offices, and industry partners. It is not uncommon that every weapon system in the Air Force requires support from all 3 depots, multiple supply chain organizations, and the other organizations listed. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy the rest of LOA.
Thank you for that overview. Okay, so now we all know what the complex is, what goes on in the complex. Let's see what's been happening in about the past year. I know with COVID, your lives have probably really changed. So we'd like to hear from each one of you with what you've been dealing with COVID, you know, what you faced, what's going on now, kind of how are you protecting the people? How are you meeting the depot mission through the depot operations of producing airplanes and your commodities and the supply chain. So to get this started, I'm going to turn it over to Brigadier General Hammerstead for you to give us some insight.
Great, thanks, Cindy, and thanks for having all of us on the panel today. It's awesome to be back in the LOA environment, and we're really happy to do the panel today. So I will jump right into it and address your question here on COVID, which is, you know, all of us have been working through this over the last year. I think today, to help answer this question, we're going to kind of look at it at three parts. I'll address the first part, which is kind of what did we do with COVID when it first started? And then I think General King will cover what did we do, what are we doing now? And then General von Hoffman will address kind of what are some lessons learned that are enduring. So when COVID first kicked off, just kind of like the rest of our country, we had to figure out, what are we doing? How do we work through this? And I think that, all of us will agree that priority number one was caring for our workforce, right? So initially we had sent people home, but very quickly, as you heard, the captain did an exceptional job teeing up what Sustainment Center does. Our mission has got to continue, or the United States Air Force can't do theirs, right? So very quickly we had to figure out how do we get people back to work. So focus was, how do we keep our workforce safe? How do we get people back to work? So I think as a whole, even though we had slight differences between the complexes, given the regions where we live and the impacts of the virus in different areas, for the most part, all of us got back to work fairly quickly within 30 days, following CDC guidelines. Here at Robbins, for example, we set up a COVID cell, we call it, where we did our own contact tracing, working with public health, ensuring that we had cleaning stations. We changed shifts for our workforce so that people could, so our workforce could be more socially distant. So just kind of thinking out of the box to ensure that we could get people back to work, because I think it's obvious to the crowd in the audience today that for our mission in the Sustainment Center, or I should say at the complexes specifically, teleworking is really not an option for the vast majority of our workforce. We have to be here to produce those aircraft, produce those commodities and engines and all the things that you just heard described by Captain Jensen. So I think that's the big takeaway when this all started. And as leaders, right, that's what we get paid to do, is to think out of the box when there's a crisis, whether it's a pandemic or a power outage or whatever it is. How do we continue with the mission that's so vital to our United States Air Force? So with that, like I said, I think General King is going to kind of talk about what are we doing now a year later? What do the complexes look like after COVID?
Okay.
Thanks, General Hammerstead. You talked about our journey over the last year, and really, so what I'll hit on here is what we're looking at today, and not just as in today right now, but kind of this enduring period somewhere between where we've been, that long road getting here, and what General von Hoffman is going to talk about is some of the challenges for the foreseeable future. Our two main challenges, COVID-related challenges right now, I think are fatigue and really some negative impacts that are associated with telework. And in terms of fatigue, I mean, it's no surprise to any of you. It feels like Groundhog Day over and over. Same thing. We're restricted at home. It's a challenge at work. Mask wear. All of us are fairly used to MOP 4. That's not the case largely with our civilian workforce. And so wearing a mask all day, day in and day out, especially as they're up and down airplanes and in other locations, really becomes quite obtrusive. And those of us who wear glasses, it's more of a pain in the neck. Really combating that frustration and the complacency that can bring about is our growing concern. And I'd say not so much on the workplace. Our folks, our workforce, like yours, is disciplined. They know the rules. They know what we're supposed to do. Occasionally we forget. I think really our biggest challenge is getting folks to do what's right off duty when they get off base. Mask wear. Different people have different opinions about mask wear, frankly, so making sure they keep their masks up, social distance whenever possible, and washing our cleaning regimens, maintaining them on duty. Constant reminder, that's where our frontline leadership comes into play, but also trying to get them to do that off duty is very important. And I put that in terms of on Oklahoma Air Logistics at our complex, we've had about 1,500 plus COVID positive cases through contact tracing. Frankly, we found that less than 5 were contracted on the installation. So what's that tell us? It tells us mask wear, washing our hands, cleaning frequently. It works, right? Even when people have come COVID positive and have identified that they were symptomatic, and then went home, we've had almost no cases of it being transferred at the workplace. So trying to get that mindset across to people that if they do that off base, they can reduce the risk of bringing COVID on the installation. Of course, we're not just worried about their welfare, but we're also worried about the impact to the mission of having large swaths of personnel affected. A year later, you know, I mean, it still hasn't quite sunk in with some folks, but we're keeping after it. And you know, it's especially important to us because, as General Hammerstead said, telework is not an option for, you know, more than 7,000 of the 11,000 employees at Tinker alone. And it's the same for the other ALCs. Touch labor, you got to be here. And then the other issue is the negative impact associated with telework, if you will. For some agencies, telework's been very helpful, and they find that nothing's lost. In fact, in some cases, something's gained by not all the targeted opportunity snipes and meetings and things that kind of get in the way. They're able to be more productive at home. That can be true for them. But what we found is sometimes those that support the ALC that leverage telework don't always meet the need for our production's related speed. Telework, frankly, can slow our production velocity. We've seen it happen frequently when people aren't available to answer their phones. Household activity is going on in the background, kids tugging on them or dogs yapping away. And in some cases, you know, where they say, okay, yep, I'm happy to come in, but I won't be able to be there until tomorrow or the next day. That's really counterproductive when we have a production stoppage today and we need an engineer, supply chain management, DLA, we need someone to come out and lay eyes on a problem and really fix it. So we really have a lot to do in terms of telework, really for the overall mission in AFMC, to get the best out of it where we can, but really make sure we're supporting our touch labor and our production activities in the ALC. One of the things that we're doing to help ourselves, and that's make good use of exception to policies to allow those who have come in close contact to return to work. And we're doing it differently in each ALC, different workforces, different location, different levels of numbers affected and base HPCon levels. But by and large, that's been a very valuable tool for us. So if we have one person pop positive in a work center of 50 people that were all deemed to be in close contact, I can sign a letter that night and bring them all back to work the next day. And then we track every one of those people. So if one pops positive, then we go back and correlate. So, you know, we know how many people that were on an ETP became positive. And we see that number start to rise at all, then that basically tells me I've got a rheostat we can dial to reduce risk and protect our workforce while keeping production going. But we've been able to bring back several thousand people almost instantaneously with very little risk whatsoever. In fact, again, through contact tracing, we haven't found that anyone who was on an ETP when they became positive contracted COVID on the installation. Again, it was off installation. So those tools have been very valuable to us. And again, we're doing everything we can to protect our workforce, but really keep production going, because we know every airplane, every part, every engine, every software upgrade is terribly important to you all. Okay, General von Hoffman, over to you for the way ahead.
Hey, thanks, Jeff. So we'll talk about what's enduring. What are some things that have come out of our COVID-19 response that we want to keep? And there's several things to mention here. General King wound up his comments with production and what we've been able to keep going here at this complex at Ogden and the others as well. It's important to remember, as these folks continue to come in, true patriots, while other people were kind of sitting at home for a while trying to figure things out, the depot employees kept coming in, and they did that all the way through FY20. Some of them, like General King mentioned, were in essence quarantining at work and still getting the mission done. The result of that, the enduring result of that over FY20, this complex, we executed 97% of the work hours we intended to execute in FY20 before COVID plan. So those type of operations, that type of production continued to happen. Some of the things that we also did, so there's small military contingent in all of the depots that their wartime mission is ABDR. We call them depot field teams or expeditionary depot maintenance folks. They did some really innovative things. In the beginning, when we couldn't travel, as much. We had restrictions. We went to a virtual collaborative troubleshooting with our field maintainers. Over the telephone, over video chat, we were able to do some troubleshooting, push parts and tooling to them that normally would come with our depot field team. In essence, just walk them through it over the shoulder, but in a virtual format. We're going to keep that. That was effective. That doesn't mean you're not going to see our depot field teams at your units, you will, but where we can help the units do it themselves, we'll continue to do that. Virtual training, turned out we can do CBTs and other type training for our mechanics that is effective from home. And so we'll continue to do that. One of the things we had to become really good at is closely monitoring the supply chain, and particularly small businesses that were affected by COVID. So the supply chain affects us just like it does you. We need parts to complete depot operations on aircraft, on landing gear. We have to continue to monitor that supply chain. We got really good at that, and knowing really down to individual parts that were going to be produced because we had to have them, and they were being restricted by commercial industries COVID-19 impacts. We'll continue to be a lot better at monitoring the supply chain and how that affects us going forward. We talked a little bit about telework, where we have employees who are eligible for telework and are just as effective. We'll continue to move them kind of from the ad hoc arrangement that we have now to something more permanent as we go forward. But as General King also pointed out, where we're doing it now and it's not effective, we'll also, for the long run, evaluate whether those folks stay on telework, and particularly our supporting agencies. And then finally, we all got smarter on how to protect our workforce from a biological standpoint, from a pandemic. So before this, I don't think it was anything that was in our crosshairs. We worry about fall protection, we worry about chemical hazards, and we're really good with that. But the extensive cleaning, the understanding what our workforce environment is like, really from a biological standpoint, is something that's enduring and that we'll keep an eye on from here on out. So to wrap up, we learned a lot of lessons across the depot on how to keep a depot running, what's efficient, what's not when you have this type of pandemic. And from an enduring standpoint, those are lessons learned that we're just now going through and making sure we have documented, so that we hope this is not going to happen again, but we certainly have the lessons learned to be able to manage it. Back over to you, Cindy.
Okay. Wow. You guys have really done a lot in a year in facing this pandemic and getting the operations really going. That's pretty amazing. Thank you for that. So now let's move on to maybe innovation, because I know part of the theme here is what's going on in the future. And I know at each one of the complexes, you have very creative people, you have very creative organizations. So with innovation, or the art of the possible, why don't you share with us what's going on in each one of your areas, okay? And Brigadier General Hammerstead, we'll start with you again. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Thanks, Cindy. I'll try to be brief because I think each of us could probably talk for the length of the panel on this question. So
yes,
let me just start. When you talk about innovation and production and remaining competitive and being efficient, you mentioned art of the possible, right? So real quickly for the audience, art of the possible is the standard management system that we use in Air Force Sustainment Center. Right. So this is how we do our production at each of the complexes. The way I always explain AOP to people, it's really like 3 core tenets to AOP. We work along a critical path. We use constraint-based management techniques, and we resolve constraints, right? So to put it simply, if you were doing anything around your house or in your work environments, you have a plan. Right? That plan is the known way to do something. You execute that plan, and when something goes wrong, it identifies a constraint, and then you go fix it, right? So that's really, it seems very simple, but when you do AOP or constraint-based management at the scale that we do at the complexes, it gets it gets pretty complex at the complexes, even though it's a tried and true method. So really, to your point, Cindy, about bringing up AOP, that is the way that we operate on a daily basis. That's how we every day come to work trying to do things faster, smarter, more cost effective, is getting after the processes that really drive production and ensuring that we're doing things effectively and efficiently. So that really is how we operate and innovate, right? Because innovation comes out of that, right? How do we do things better? What kind of stuff do we need to be more effective? So that is kind of the core principle. So thank you for bringing up AOP to get after innovation. Real quickly, because I want to give time to the other commanders. Other innovative things I'm really excited about, like here at Robbins, we are really jumping in with both feet on our robotic systems, right? Over the last 5 years, we've tripled in the amount of robots we have in work here at the complex. Right now, we have 33 systems that do all kinds of things. And really for the audience, the primary purpose, the driver here is, of course, quality, but think about taking our employees, our workforce out of like hazardous environments, right? Just stripping paint and hazardous chemicals off of flight controls, right? If we can use a robot to do that, it's safer, more effective. So I'm super excited about that. We have a plan to grow over the next 4 years to up to 65 different processes where we use robots. Second thing I'm really excited about on the innovation front is our additive manufacturing. And I think we probably have that across all 3 of the complexes. But think your 3D printing, just the amount of money and time we're able to save, even if we're not to the point where we're putting a whole lot of actual parts on aircraft, what we're able to do at the depot to model parts and components and processes at speed, at reduced cost by using different materials other than titanium and metal that costs a lot of money, just a huge enabler. And the last thing I'd say is that, we're always looking for ways to innovate to improve our workforce, right? So here, another example at Robbins, we have several partnerships outside the gate that integrate with our education, like our Board of Education or our technical colleges in the local community, because I'll save it for my closing comments. Of all the things that we do at the complex, keeping our workforce robust and keeping them continuing to recruit talent is so important. So we have some great partnerships. Example, we just stood up a maintenance facility at our local Macon airport where we do overhauling of commodities. Right in the same hangar, Central Georgia Technical College is teaching high school graduates how to repair and fix aircraft, right? So it's shared space, a lot of synergy, and hopefully, the intent there is a huge recruiting tool for the future. So with that, great question. I want to yield time to the other 2 complex commanders. So thank you for that great question.
Okay. How about you, General King? What's going on at Tinker?
Yeah, so this is, I think General Hammerstead hit it. We could probably talk for hours on this topic alone. It's really central to what we do. When I talk about our sustainment related challenges in the Air Force, I usually put it in terms of geriatrics and pediatrics. We have very old airplane fleets and very new airplane fleets. And there's challenges associated with both those. Not only do both types of airplanes find new ways to brake, but they both experience DMS issues, or diminishing manufacturers of sources of supply and repair. There's 3 general areas which I'd say kind of we all leverage innovation to improve readiness and reduce the cost of logistics. First, we rely heavily on reverse engineering and additive manufacturing. As General Hammerstead said, not only to tackle problems with aircraft in PDM and parts for repair, but also we have just a vast array of industrial equipment. We've got 50, 3, 4, and 5D milling machines alone, hundreds of presses and brakes and other pieces of equipment I couldn't even begin to describe. And keeping all that up and running when some of them are 20, 30 years old is a challenge. So leveraging reverse engineering, additive manufacturing really gets after keeping not only our aircraft, but our equipment up and running as well. And each ALC has an innovation center for us to react is what it's called, reverse engineering. Really, it's a small team that's packed with engineers and 3D printers and laser scanners. And we leverage processes like cold spray and plasma spray, some of the more advanced additive manufacturing techniques to get a little more life out of parts that are no longer supported by industry. Rather than replacing a whole part, if we can use cold spray or plasma spray and then build that back up, then we can go back in and mill it down to the original specs. And it's as strong as the original metal, and we can put it back into flight, which is fantastic. There's a whole lot of processes that are just not supported by industry today. And so we leverage these unique technologies to help close that gap. One of the interesting things we do here at Oak City Air Logistics Complex is we have the world's largest scanning electron microscope. And it sounds pretty cool, and it is. It costs about $1 million. And that investment has allowed us to put over $20 million of parts back into service that normal NDI methods would have deemed unserviceable. So a lot of really neat stuff going on that way. In fact, we're even building our own foundry here to be able to produce, like, gearbox casings, things like that. Things small batch items that frankly is too small for the big suppliers on the outside to be able to effectively bid on. So innovation's huge. Second, I would say that our software engineering groups, something many people don't even realize we have in our depots, are really innovation defined. Our software workload is growing by about 10% a year. And that's because we've proven that we can maintain aircraft OFPs, test equipment software, and more, frankly, better, faster, and cheaper than our commercial counterparts. And our software factories, as they're sometimes known, have shown that they can produce about 15 to 30% savings over a 15-year period in the life of a weapons system. And that equates to, about $200 to $350 million. I mean, that's not chump change. That's real money that we can put toward other Air Force requirements. So we put a lot of emphasis in our software facilities. In fact, I know, I think for each of the ALCs, we can hire more, and we have a requirement for more software engineers, more engineers in general than each of our states can produce out of their universities alone. So it's a constant challenge to hire and retain this talented workforce. And then third, as General Hammerstead indicated, each ALC leverages a multitude of partnerships with industry and academia and government agencies alike. And just give you a couple of examples, and I'll pass to General von Hoffman, but through what we call blanket captains of industry programs with prime contractors, we can get parts faster and cheaper than older ways of doing contracting for getting these parts. Oklahoma City Air Logistics Complex recently signed partnerships with the University of Oklahoma and OSU that allow us to share intellectual capital and equipment in a way that's not pay for play the way it used to be. Hey, if we'll pay you for some advice or access to your equipment, you pay us. This new blanket allows us to really share information and technology back and forth. With much more velocity is helpful. So we get access to bright young minds and tenured professors who excel in certain areas like propulsion, radar, additive manufacturing, and they get access to unique equipment and really real world problems that bring their academics to life. They've kind of been the foundation of several internships, and we all have internships for several hundred people at a time, either engineers or programmers. And down the road, not only do we think that's going to help us get after some of our readiness problems quicker, but hopefully it'll help with recruiting and retention in both our uniformed and our civil service. We also partner with national labs like Oak Ridge National Laboratory, Tesseract, the Rapid Sustainment Office. Those are obviously governmental agencies, and we leverage those to quickly inject new technologies into our production processes. And then lastly, I'd say we actively and encourage, celebrate great ideas from our workforce. One program we use is known as Cost-Effective Logistics Program. We track that over time. And the goal, I think, at each ALC is over a number of years is to generate $1 billion in savings and cost avoidances. And we have dozens of examples. We're well down that road. One I'll just give you is we had an idea generated from our workforce to locally manufacture a B2 lanyard retention bracket. We've reverse engineered that part, developed a low cost production method for it organically. And that one idea drove a $700,000 annual savings alone. And it directly impacted readiness because frankly, this was one kind of had a need, the commercial supplier wasn't supplying them, and we're going to have grounded airplanes. So fantastic ideas from our workforce. We celebrate them, and we inject them as quick as possible. I just say, bottom line, your ALCs are absolutely innovation centers of excellence, and we're dead square focused on increasing readiness while getting after the larger mandate of reducing the cost of sustainment. General von Hoffman, over to you.
Thanks. So Generals Hammerstedt and King really hit so many of what's going on across the complexes for innovation. I'll just foot stomp one last one. You know, when we think about the sustainment center enterprise, we kind of think about, okay, we acquired the weapon system, the commodity, and it's been in service for a while, and now it's being sustained. But there's a lot of innovation in the depots that are going on right now that have to do with the development of new weapon systems. And I'll call out Ground-Based Strategic Deterrent, GBSD, is in development right now. We have our many software engineers that are writing code right now with the development of GBSD. And on top of that, we have people in our missile maintenance group that are embedded with GBSD to talk to them about how they plan sustainment in the acquisition part of the weapon system. So many times we buy things, and as sustainers and logisticians, our frustration is we've designed something that's hard or expensive or technically difficult to sustain, and we say, why didn't you call us in the beginning why you were designing this weapon system or this component? We're in that business now. We're in it in GBSD. We're in it in the B-21, and so innovation isn't just once we're handed the weapon system, the component sustained, but we're a part of that discussion now. And then the final thing I'll say is, you know, innovation isn't just the latest technology. It's also processes and really understanding networks. General Hammerstedt talked about art of the possible. One of the main components of resolving constraints is having all the stakeholders at the table. So really intensely managing the networks that support a depot and support our production lines. So that's supply chain, that's DLA, that's the program office, that's us and from the depot, and also commercial partners, and having us all at the table to resolve those constraints is something that we can continue to improve, continue to innovate. Like I said, it's not just the technology that's out there, but it's also getting after processes that make us faster, better, cheaper. So with that, Cindy, I'll turn it back over to you.
Wow. Lots of good stuff happening out there at all the complexes. It seems like you guys are piled in together and sharing all of that. So man, that's wonderful. So I know we're about finished. Our time is coming up on us. So I'll just reserve some time and give you all to give us some final comments or anything that you want to say out there to the folks that are listening to this and are gaining all this knowledge from you. So I'll turn it over to Brigadier General Hammerstedt. Any final comments?
Thanks, Cindy. In the interest of time, thank you again for hosting this panel. Anyone listening today can hear about, it sounds like life at the complex is very process driven, very, compliance based, very heavy on engineering, and all of that is very true. In addition, each of us we're kind of running a large $1 million businesses here. So there's another facet of running a complex that's all about meeting targets, production targets, and money, and how all that's managed. But I just want to leave with the crowd that ultimately leading in a complex is really about leading people. We all have the privilege of leading large workforce here at Robins, nearly 8,000 tremendous Americans who have, for many of them, served their entire life here at Robins Air Force Base. And if you love airplanes and you love maintenance or you love logistics, don't ever pass an opportunity to serve at a complex, because it's all of that. Plus you get to serve tremendous Americans who, are so very good at what they do. We get to see the coolest things happen to airplanes and stuff here. So don't ever miss an opportunity to serve at an ALC because it's different, or it's not, an operational flight line. We've all been there, and I can tell you that this is just a tremendous opportunity. The sooner the better. Don't wait too late in your career. If you have an opportunity to jump on the LCBP program or any other opportunity that comes your way, take it. I'll leave it at that to leave time for the other two complex commanders. Thank you again, Cindy.
Thank you. How about General von Hoffman? Any final comments?
Hey, yeah, just real quick, I will say it to everybody, open invitation, come see us. There's formal programs when we're delivering aircraft that crew chiefs or the chiefs or the company grade officers can come out and see what's going on with their aircraft, and then see the final stages as we do flight tests as they roll out. But that invitation is open to any of you all. If you're in the neighborhood of Oklahoma City or Warner Robins, Georgia, or the Salt Lake City area, please come see us. It's important whether you're an LRO in learning supply chain business. We are a consumer of the supply chain, but we deliver to the supply chain. And it's fascinating, that part of the business. Open invitation, come see us. It is just like General Hammerstedt said, it is a huge, complex business. And if you're a real logistician, you need to walk through the depot. Over to you, Jeff.
Yeah, thanks. And I think you're going to hear a common theme from us, and that's that service in the depot at some point in your career. Frankly, some of the best maintainers and logisticians I've served with through multiple assignments have had a walk in an ALC or a supply chain management wing or the SCOW, who really understand the bigger processes. And because I think General Hammerstedt had a look at my notes and hit so much of what I was going to talk about, I'll just give a quick example. And let me put it in terms of log C2. And that isn't log command and control, that's log collaboration and communication. There was a time downrange, one example, I was at Bagram, and we were having a problem with A-10 HUDs. They were being washed out. It was unsafe really for pilots to fly during the day. And we burnt through like about 8 in a week. And we were at the point where we were canning one out of the phase jet as quickly as we could to get a jet in the air. We called up and asked for help, and they said, yep, there's no more in the supply system. We're gonna have to figure that out. We'll get back to you. Not especially helpful when you're flying an ATO. Meantime, one of the tech sergeants for the Guardian that was with us came up and said, hey, when we were at Kandahar a few years ago, the engineers allowed us to peel back a little sticker on the HUD and dial up the brightness. So I said, great, yeah, go do that. Go ask for a blanket 107 to do that. And the answer from the engineers came back, nope. So while I was going through this kind of short bout of Tourette's due to lack of support, a deputy maintenance group commander at the time said, hey, boss, hold on a second, I think I got this. He'd served in a depot, and he knew exactly how to go about this log C2 before we even really had a name for it. He brought together the A-10 WIST, the Ogden depot, the SPO, and the supply chain management folks, and really sat down and had a conversation with them and explained to them what was going on. And it was interesting because it's like they were all looking at an elephant from a different side, describing a different animal. When we told them, they said, hey, why didn't you approve the 107 to dial up the brightness? And the engineer said, well, they'll burn out faster. Well, okay, but they're already unserviceable. Ooh, good point. So we'll approve the 107, submit them, and put the LRU number on there so we can track them. And as soon as you submit it, consider it approved. Okay, that was helpful, right? The folks at the ALC said, well, we haven't started producing them because we've got to get to a carcass threshold before we kind of stop doing one thing and move to another. We had no idea that you went through so many so quick. We'll gin up that production line right now. And the supply chain management folks said, hey, we'll strap them to Mercury's back and fly them right out to you as soon as we're done. And the WIS said, well, if you don't see relief in 24 hours in one way or another, then we will pull parts from units non-deploying and we'll send them out to fix you. That is log C2. That is bringing the entire enterprise, wholesale engineering, maintenance, logistics, right to your doorstep. And there's no better place to learn how that works than by coming through an ALC. So what I'm trying to do is provide a real world tangible example of how an ALC tour can benefit you and your wings downrange. You'll find that the higher you go in an organization, the more complex your challenges, and the less influence you have over policy and the resources you'll need to fix the problem. You got to reach out and touch somebody who's got them. And by coming here and understand how the big supply chain works, not just hitting the elevator button on what appears to be a broken elevator on base supply as they try to, mine unobtainium and get parts that just aren't had. You can actually get at the source. You have facilities that can manufacture them. We've got special contracts that allow us to go do things that no one else can do. Once you understand how all that works, it's an asymmetric advantage to the field. You end up being the brightest person in the room and making glove saves that really can avert grounding issues or support the ATO. So that's my best pitch. Come check out an ALC. And like General von Hoffman said, if you ever have a chance to visit, absolutely knock you out of your use with some of the amazing things you'll see here. Is it a different kind of maintenance and a different kind of workforce? Absolutely. But it's maintenance. And we all believe that readiness actually begins in our ALCs with the work we do and the longevity we put back on our aircraft and equipment. So last thing I'll say is thanks for spending time with us today. We all miss in-person LOAs, renewing friendships, starting new ones, mentoring that goes along with that. God willing, we'll be able to get back to them next year and be able to do this in person and be able to get after being with each other. In the meantime, big shout out to all of you doing tough work in the field on the front lines. Shout out to our members of our Acquisition Officer Association, who are our partners in crime, who are here joining with us. And bottom line is, if any one of the three of us or anybody that works with us can be a service to you, give us a call. We'll jump right on it. That said, keep flying.
Wow. Wow. What an exciting session. It is so great to hear from you all and what's going on at complexes. And I can tell you, I spent 30 of my years in the Air Force at different complexes, and it was truly amazing, the things that you get to do and that you're exposed to. So yes, I would encourage anybody out there to take a tour and enjoy your time. And it is exciting working at the complexes. So I want to thank you all for taking the time and sharing the experiences and kind of what's going on right now. And the time out of your day. I know you all are very busy. I want to thank you out there in Zoom land who's listening and watching this, and hopefully you've been enlightened about what happens at the complex. So for now, we'll just wrap this up and say, I hope everybody has a great Air Force Day. Thank you for joining us and enjoy your day. Bye for now.